August 12, 2025, Masinde Muliro University of Science and Technology, Kakamega County. It's International Youth Day, and President William Samoei Ruto is on stage doing what he does best: making promises. 100,000 young Kenyans, 50,000 shillings each, 5 billion shillings total. The National Youth Opportunities Towards Advancement, Nyota, is here to transform youth unemployment to be long-term sustainability to finally unlock the potential of Kenyan young people. The crowd cheers, cameras flash, the speeches soar, and if you are a Kenyan who's been paying attention for the last 2 decades, you feel something familiar in your stomach. Not hope, not excitement, deja vu. Because we've been here before, many times before. Welcome to the Kenyan Week That Was. I'm your host, DY, and today we're talking about the Nyota Fund. But really, we're talking about something bigger, the graveyard of good intentions where Kenyan youth empowerment funds go to die. We're talking about billions of shillings that vanish. We're talking about corruption so predictable, it might as well be in the constitution. And we're talking about a question that nobody in the government wants to ask. What if these funds aren't failing by accident? What if they're working exactly as designed? Let's get into it. So, Nyota, let me give you the pitch because it sounds good. It really does. On paper, this thing looks like everything the previous funds weren't. It's a 5-year initiative, World Bank financed. We'll come back to that. Targeting 820,000 unemployed youth across the country. Not just loans this time, but a comprehensive approach: skills development, apprenticeship, business support, financial literacy, forced savings. Incentivized savings. And this is the thing they are calling strengthening youth employment systems, which, as far as I can tell, means teaching 600,000 young people how to access government procurement opportunities that we all know don't actually exist for most of us. But the headline is this: 100,000 youth entrepreneurs are each going to receive 50,000 shillings in startup capital. That's the promise. 70 youth from each of Kenya's 1,450 wards. Everyone gets a shot. Gender parity, 50-50, men and women. If you're a person with disability, they've extended the age limit for you to 35 instead of 29. The application process? Just dial *254# on your phone and take a 19-question entrepreneurship aptitude test. Show up to your constituency headquarters for physical validation, and if you are one of the chosen few, you get your money deposited into something called, or something we all know as, Pochi La Biashara Wallet, the business pocket wallet. Cute name, 100%. Safaricom got it right on this one. Oh, and there's mentorship. 2 months of structured business development, support from experienced entrepreneurs and industry experts, training, hand-holding, the whole works, the whole 9 yards. The government says this is different from everything that came before. This time, they've learned. This time, there's oversight. And this time especially, it's serious. This time is different. Oh, they always get me with this one. Now, where have we had that before? Just asking. Let me take you on a tour of the graveyard where Kenyan youth funds go to die. Because to understand why Nyota is almost certainly doomed, you need to understand the corpses it's being built on top of. Number 1, the Youth Enterprise and Development Fund. That was started in 2007. So our story starts in 2007. President Mwai Kibaki's second term. The economy is growing. There's optimism in the air, and the government launches the Youth Enterprise and Development Fund, the YEDF, through legal notice number 63. The pitch? Simple. Empower youth entrepreneurs, create employment through enterprise development, provide accessible, affordable credit to young people who can't get it from commercial banks. Brilliant. 18 years later, here are the numbers. From inception to June 2022, the YEDF disbursed about 14.2 billion shillings. That went roughly to 2 million youth. Do the math. The average loan size was 7,100 shillings. 7,100 shillings. That's up to about $50 to start a business in Kenya in 2022. And this is not to say that the only amount of money that was being disbursed was that 7,000, but we're taking an average of the number of people that actually got the loan versus how much had been disbursed to give us a mean average rate of how much actual money was spent on a person perhaps. And that is 7,100. But okay, maybe some loans can work if people pay them back and build their credit, right? Well, the repayment rate in the financial year of 2021 to 2022 was 74.8%, which sounds not terrible, actually amazing. Until you realize that's a default rate of about 25.2%. So, roughly said, 1 in 4 loans never repaid. That's about 3.55 billion shillings gone. But wait. It gets better. In 2015, the CEO of the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, a woman named Catherine Namuye, was suspended. The banking fraud unit had flagged suspicious transactions in the Youth Fund account. The board was informed. An investigation began. A year later, the board's chairman, Bruce Odhiambo, resigned to allow the investigations to proceed. Eventually, both Namuye and Odhiambo were charged with 12 counts of corruption related to the loss of about 180 million shillings of taxpayer money. 180 million from a fund meant for the youth. And that wasn't even the only scandal. In 2018, 7 more staff members were suspended of irregular loan disbursements. The chairman at the time admitted they found staff colluding with youth groups to steal from the fund. His exact words, if you were to really steal, don't steal the money for giving the youths. That's the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. Launched with hope, riddled with corruption, producing loans too small to matter and a default rate too high to ignore. And what's the government's current budget allocation for Youth Enterprise Development Fund in 2024-2025 financial year? 200 million shillings, down from billions at launch. The fund has been essentially defunded. They've actually completely given up on it. But they haven't shut it down. It just exists. A zombie institution, still there on paper, doing almost nothing in practice. Okay, one fund failed. Maybe it was bad management. Maybe it was the wrong approach. Let's try again. The Women Enterprise Fund. Actually, let's rewind 1 year to 2006. The Women Enterprise Fund launches around the same time as the Young Youth Enterprise Development Fund. The goal, subsidized credit for women entrepreneurs, capacity building, investment in infrastructure that supports micro, small, and medium enterprises run by women. For years, this fund operates in the background. We don't hear much about it. It's just there, dispersing loans, supposedly empowering women. Then, in 2023-2024 financial year, the Women Enterprise Fund disburses 941 million shillings to 200,505 women. Not huge money, but a significant number of beneficiaries. Over 18,000 group access loans. The very next year, 2024-2025, the disbursement drops to 111 million shillings. That's an 80.1% decline. The number of women beneficiaries falls from over 200,000 to just 3,307. The number of groups accessing the loans drops from 18,955 to 310. Just like that, Kanyari number. What happened? The fund missed out on government development grant, so it collapsed almost overnight. The current budget allocation for the Women Enterprise Fund in 2024 to 2025, 182 million shillings, essentially life support. Do you see the pattern yet? Can you see it? We will. But let's keep going. The Uwezo Fund from 2013. September 2013, President Uhuru Kenyatta's first term, a new fund launches, Uwezo. The name means capability in Swahili. The promise, a bottom-up approach, constituency-level decision-making, empowering women, youth, and persons with disability right at the grassroots. The Uwezo Fund was supposed to be different because it was devolved. Each constituency got its own Uwezo Fund committee, appointed by their local member of parliament. The money would be close to the people, accessible, even transparent. By 2021, the Auditor General Nancy Gathongo is trying to audit the Uwezo Fund, and she runs into a problem, actually several problems. First, the Uwezo Fund management cannot provide a list of the groups they've supported since inception. They can't produce it. They don't have it. The CEO is out there at public events claiming the fund has reached 10 million Kenyans, supported 76,474 groups, disbursed 7.1 billion shillings. But when the auditor asks for the records, the answer is, we don't have them. Imagine. Secondly, when auditors visit the constituency offices, they find chaos. In Muhoroni and in Khwisero constituencies, individual loan accounts and details of loan beneficiaries simply does not exist. In some cases, groups were given loans with no evidence of approval, no completed application forms. Imagine. Thirdly, in Bureti constituency, the Uwezo Fund offices are completely dormant. They've been closed since, guess it? 2016. No operation, no staff, outstanding loans will never, ever be recovered. The Auditor General's assessment, 4.64 billion shillings is at risk. That's not a loss yet, technically. It's just unaccounted for. But year after year, the number grows. In 2019, it was 3.9 billion. In 2020, it was 4.1 billion. In 2021, it was 4.64 billion. I want to know today, as it stands, how far and how much has it risen to? And if you ask, the repayment rate? An estimated 40.6%, which means the default rate is nearly 60%. The worst of any of these funds. Imagine that in 100 people given, 60 of them were given free money that they never ever thought of bringing back or paying. So they all defaulted. When journalists try to follow up with the Uwezo Fund officials, they hide in their offices and flee the building. There's no accountability. No consequences. The oversight board continues to exist. The fund continues to disburse money somewhere, somehow, to someone. Maybe you know someone. I don't. The 2024-2025 budget allocation for the Uwezo Fund, you ask? 200 million shilling, same as Youth Enterprise and Development Fund, defunded but still allocated money. Defunded but not dead. 3 funds, 3 failures, billions lost, corruption scandals, audits ignored, and yet no one has gone to jail. But maybe you're thinking, okay, these were old funds, badly designed from previous governments. Surely we've learned something. Surely the current administration wouldn't repeat the same mistakes, would they? They are better. They are led by superior leaders, people who have the best interests of us Kenyans at heart. Oh, friend, let me tell you. And this time around, I'm going to tell you about the Hustler Fund. The Hustler Fund from 2022 to now, presently. November 30th, 2022, President William Ruto has been in office for less than 3 months. He made a lot of promises during his campaign. One of the biggest was the Hustler Fund, affordable credit for the people at the bottom of the pyramid. The mama boggers, the border riders, the small traders locked out of formal banking. 50 billion shillings in startup capital. 8% interest annually, calculated daily at 0.02%. In a country where some digital lenders charge over 100% per year. So, instant access is guaranteed via mobile phone. Just dial *25# and borrow. Borrow the money. Get the money, repay within 14 days, build your credit, borrow more, lift yourself up. Jenga, jijenge kama mwananchi. The bottom-up economic transformation agenda, the BETA, or better. The Hustler Fund was the flagship. And the uptake was massive. I mean, genuinely massive. Within months, over 20 million Kenyans had registered. By November 2023, the one-year anniversary, 19 million active borrowers. By late 2025, over 27 million people have borrowed from the Hustler Fund. Total disbursement, over 70 billion shillings. That's unprecedented access. That's millions of Kenyans getting credit for the first time or getting it cheaper than they've ever could from a commercial lender. We should applaud this. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is this. Most of them aren't paying it back. Plain and simple. Let's talk numbers. Real numbers. In 2023, the Auditor General reported a default rate of about 32%. Not great, but manageable. Maybe mid-2024, it's over. By mid-2024, it's over 50%. By August 2024, an analysis by another investment company puts it at about 59%. And by December of 2024, according to a report by the Kenyan Human Rights Commission, the default rate is at 68.3%. 68.3%. That is 2 out of 3 borrowers aren't paying back their loans. And by June 2024, out of a total loan portfolio of 13.57 billion shillings, 8.74 stands unpaid. And the government's own documents admit that for every 500 shilling disbursed, 340 shillings is lost. That's a net loss of about, give or take, 71.5% when you factor in the cost of borrowing and operations. 71.5%. Let's put that into perspective. The government borrows money from the market at an average treasury bill rate of 8.2 to 10%. By law, the Hustler Fund operational cost is 3%. So the real cost of the taxpayer is about 11.2%. But the fund lends at 8%. So even before a single default, the government is already losing 3.2% on every loan. Now add the 68% default rate. The Hustler Fund is hemorrhaging money, and it's not some small side project. 70 billion shillings in. Yeah, as in 70 billion shillings have been disbursed. That's roughly 35 billion shillings in defaults based on current rates. 35 billion shillings of taxpayer money gone. But wait, it gets even worse. On August 4th, 2025, the Kenyan Human Rights Commission releases a report titled Failing the Hustlers. It's a comprehensive, scathing analysis of the Hustler Fund, and it reveals some truly shocking details. First, the fund's design is fundamentally broken. A 14-day repayment period for loans as small as 500 shillings is absurd. You can't start a business and generate enough profit to repay a loan in 2 weeks. It's impossible. So, what are people using the money for? Consumption. Definitely. Rent, food, school fees, motorbike repairs, survival, not investment. And when it's time to repay, they can't. So, like any other human being, they default. Secondly, there is no real loan recovery system. The government outsourced disbursement to Safaricom and Kenya Commercial Bank, but there is no dedicated infrastructure for tracking borrowers, following up on defaults, or enforcing repayment. So when people don't pay, nothing happens. No consequences, no credit bureau listing, at least not consistently, and the public perception becomes, this is a gift, a thank you from the government for electing them, not a loan. Third, The demographic targeting is completely backwards. The KHRC report, citing data from 2025 economic survey by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, finds that the wealthiest Kenyans are accessing Hustler Fund the most. You know, it's amazing. 35.8% of people in the highest wealth quintile have used the fund. Compare that to just 18.7% of people in the lowest wealth quintile. You know, the poorest Kenyans, the ones the fund was supposedly designed for, are the least likely to access it. Meanwhile, the richest and well-to-do are borrowing the most. Why? Because you need a smartphone. You need to understand USSD codes. You need financial literacy. You need to be digitally connected. The hustlers at the bottom of the pyramid often do not have those things. So the fund meant for them is being captured by people who essentially do not need it. Fourth, age and geographic disparities. The highest default rate are people over 90-year-old at 78%. Yes. We're talking about nanogenarians are borrowing. We're talking about nanogenarians who are borrowing from the Hustler Fund. How? Why? The system allowed it. Meanwhile, people under 30, the supposed primary beneficiaries, have a default rate of just 12%. The youth are actually the most responsible borrowers, but they are not the majority of the users, unfortunately. And geographically, the fund is dominated by Nairobi, Kiambu, and Nakuru, urban centers, not rural areas where the need is greatest. Fifth, outright fraud. The audits reveal that loans were disbursed to minors, to infants, to people whose birth dates in the system indicate they haven't been born yet. Loans to people born in 2030, 2030. Let that sink in. The absurdity. The Hustler Fund is a disaster, and the government knows it, because look at the budget. Look at the budget allocations. Just look at the budget allocations. 2023-2024 financial year, the Hustler Fund was allocated 10 billion shillings. The next year, it was cut to 5 billion. And in 2025-2026, it's been slashed to 300 million shillings. That's a 98% cut in 3 years. The same trajectory as the Youth Enterprise and Development Fund, as Uwezo, as the Women Enterprise Fund. Promise big, launch with fanfare, hemorrhage money, defund quietly, but never, ever shut down. And here's the kicker. When the KHRC released their report demanding the Hustler Fund be shut down, the government's response was to defend it. Cabinet Secretary Wycliffe Oparanya said the fund has been a complete success, that 26 million Kenyans have accessed affordable credit, that 60 billion shillings have been repaid. That is helping people transition to formal banking, that it is helping people transition to formal banking. But the math, unfortunately, doesn't add up, and numbers don't lie. The defaults are real, and they don't lie, and Kenyans on the ground know the truth. 4 funds, all launched with hope, all promising to transform the lives of young people, women, the marginalized, all sadly failing spectacularly. The Youth Enterprise Development Fund, corruption, defunded. The Women Enterprise Fund, collapsed, defunded. The Uwezo Fund, billions unaccounted for, defunded. The Hustler Fund, 68% default rate being defunded. So naturally, the solution is another fund. Enter Nyota. Let's go back to August 12, 2025. President Ruto at Masini Muliro University, the Nyota Fund announcement. And here's what we are told makes this one different. 1. World Bank financing. The Nyota project isn't just a Kenyan government initiative. It's funded by the World Bank. And in theory, that means proper oversight. That means accountability. It means international standards, doesn't it? Except the government hasn't actually disclosed how much the World Bank is lending for this project. We know the business support component is 5 billion shillings. We know there are other components, but the total, Completely unclear, which is already a red flag because debt transparency is kind of important, my guy. We need to know how much deep are we in, man. As a country, when the World Bank has, proceeded to give us some money for this Nyota Fund, how much are we in? So that we know how much are we going to be held, ransom by the World Bank. No, nothing. Secondly, multi-agency implementation. Instead of one ministry running the show, Nyota is implemented by multiple agencies. The State Department of Youth Affairs and the Creative Economy, the State Department for Labor, and the Micro and Small Enterprise Authority, MSEA, the National Social Security Fund, NSSF, the National Industrial Training Authority, the NITA, the National Employment Authority. So in theory, this prevents single points of failure. In practice, it means no one is clearly accountable. If something goes wrong, who do you blame? Everyone can point at the other person at any given time. 3, a structured rollout. You see, the Nyota Fund isn't launching everywhere at once. It's being rolled out in regional clusters. Phase 1, launched on December 7th, 2025, covers Western region, Kakamega, Busia, Bungoma, Vihiga. Phase 2, starting January 2026, covers 27 more counties. In theory, this allows testing and refinement. In practice, it creates opportunities for political favoritism. Notice that phase 1 is in Western Kenya. Supposedly one of Ruto's stronghold, or one of the areas that Ruto would want to get votes come 2027 election. And who is to say that the president and the government of today will not use this Nyota Fund as an enticement to those quote-unquote areas or sections of Kenya that do not look favorable towards him? The launch event was held in Umia Sports Complex, Kakamega, presided over by the president himself. Very convenient. He's getting some, he's out there trying to get some bonga points. 4, a more rigorous selection process. To access the Nyota Fund, you don't just apply. No, it's different from all these. You dial *254#, yes, the same USSD as a Hustler Fund, and you answer 19 questions in entrepreneurship aptitude test. You show up to a physical, let's just stop there. I wanted to see what are the questions in this aptitude, so that we know how are they guaranteeing that the money will come back. Then you show up to a physical validation exercise at your constituency headquarters, where they verify your residency, education level, employment status, gender, disability status, and the availability to participate fully throughout the project cycle. In theory, this screens out people who aren't serious. In practice, let me walk you through what happened. The application deadline was October 12, 2025 at noon. The validation exercise was held on October 24th and 25th, 2 days across all 290 constituency headquarters. Over 1 million people applied for 100,000 spots in the business support component. That means roughly 345 applicants per constituency had to be validated in a single day. That's not validation. That's theater. That's a skit that should go purely on one of these social media platforms. 5, comprehensive support. Unlike previous funds, Nyota doesn't just give you money and walk away. You get training too. You get mentorship, 2 months of structured business development support from experienced entrepreneurs and industry experts. But now, let's ask these questions. Who are these experts? How are they selected? How are they compensated again? Because all this is unclear, but it sounds brilliant. Now, let me tell you what actually happens when you win the Nyota Fund lottery. Because it is a lottery. You don't get the 50,000 shillings in your pocket. That's not how it works, my guy. First, Of the 50,000 shillings allocated to you, 22,000 goes into something called the Pochi la Biashara, into your Pochi la Biashara, the business wallet. This is the digital wallet, presumably managed by Safaricom, most likely, or any other mobile money provider. The other 3,000 goes directly into the Haba Savings Scheme, which is run by the National Social Security Fund. Wait, so where's the other 25,000? That's a very good question. Because 22,000 plus 3,000 equals 25,000 and not 50,000. But here's the fine print. They don't put it in the headlines. What's hitting people's hands isn't 50,000 at once. Nyota's own rollout updates describe it as a first tranche of 25,000, 22 of which goes to the Pochi la Biashara, 3 of which goes to the Haba savings, with a second disbursement after mentorship and enterprise evaluation that brings the total support to 50,000 bob. And the 3,000 is taken from you and put into a savings scheme. It's yours technically, but it's locked away with NSSF. What are the withdrawal terms? When can you access it? What's the interest rate? How does the government 2-to-1 match work? Where they claim they'll add an extra shilling for every 2 that you save, up to a maximum of 6,000 bob a year. How does that work? That's not enough. Let's talk about the other components of Nyota, because there's more than just the business grants. Component 1, improving youth employability. 90,000 youth are supposed to receive skills training, social emotional skill development, apprenticeship, on-the-job experience, OJEs and OJTs, where you're placed with a master craftsman to learn a trade, recognition of prior learning, RPL, where your existing skills are actually certified. This is managed by multiple agencies, the State Department for Youth and the State Department for Labor, NITA, and the National Employment Authority. Okay, that is an amazing idea. Skills training is brilliant. Apprenticeship is good. But here's the thing. Youth Enterprise and Development Fund also promise training and mentorship. UWEZO also promise capacity building. They all promise this, and it never happens at scale. Why? Because training is hard. It requires infrastructure. It requires qualified trainers. It requires follow-up. It requires funding that doesn't get diverted. Component 3, supporting youth savings. 190,000 youth. Those from components 1 and 2 are supposed to receive financial literacy training and be enrolled in the Haba savings scheme run by the NSSF. The pitch: save regularly and the government will match your contributions. Save 400 shillings a month for 4 months, and if you're a woman, you qualify for a maternity benefit of 4,000 shillings per month for 4 months. That's 16,000 bob. Great. Except NSSF is a pension fund. Its track record with voluntary contributions from the informal sector is not great. The Kenya National Entrepreneurs Savings Trust, KNEST, was created in 2022 specifically to mobilize pension savings from informal sector workers like boda riders, the mama mbogas. It has ambitious targets: 400 billion shillings from 4.5 million entrepreneurs within 3 years. How much has it actually mobilized? Sadly, the data is not publicly available, which tells you something. Component 4, strengthening youth employment systems. This one is the most opaque. 600,000 youth are supposed to receive digital training on accessing government opportunities. Translation: they're going to teach you about AGPO, the access to government procurement opportunities. A program where 30% of government contracts are supposed to be set aside for youth, women, and persons with disability. Except AGPO has been a disaster. The 30% target is rarely met. The procurement process is opaque. Contracts go to well-connected individuals, not grassroots youth. So, training people on how to access a broken system isn't a solution. You're delaying the inevitable. So that's Nyota. 5 billion shillings, at least going to 100,000 youth with a promise of skill, savings, and system strengthenings for hundreds of thousands more. Over 5 years, financed by the World Bank, implemented by 6 different agencies, rolled out in regional clusters. And what are the repayment terms, by the way? Just for us to know. We don't know. They haven't been publicly disclosed. Think about that. The government is disbursing what it's calling grants and business support, but it's financed by the World Bank, by a World Bank loan, and loans have to be repaid. So who's repaying it? The youth, the Kenyan taxpayer, or both of us? If the youth are expected to repay, what's the timeline? What's the interest rate? What happens if they are defaulting? If the taxpayer is repaying regardless, then this isn't a youth empowerment fund. It's a debt-financed handout with international interests attached. Either way, the Kenyan public is on the hook. And we don't even know the terms, sadly. Let me give you the red flags, all of them, in one place. Red flag number 1. World Bank dependency. Kenya's external debt is already a huge problem. We struggle, and in the past we've heard that we are at the risk of default. The government is constantly scrambling to meet debt obligation. And now we're taking on more debt from World Bank for a program that, based on every single predecessor, is likely, if not confirmed, to fail. When it does fail, though, that debt doesn't disappear. The World Bank will want its money back. And they just won't want the principal. They will want their money back plus interest. And the Kenyan taxpayer will foot the bill. So Nyota isn't just about empowering the youth. It's about adding to Kenya's debt burden for politically expedient programs. That's the problem. We keep saying that we need to tighten our belts, but we're out here going on a borrowing spree to do things that will give us political mileage, but at the cost of the future empowerment of our Kenyan populace. Red flag number 2, the same technology, infrastructure. The application process uses *254#. The same USSD code as the Hustler Fund. The money is disbursed via digital wallet, which is, the Pochi la Biashara, which, let's be real, is almost certainly going to be run by Safaricom. Just like the Hustler Fund. Isn't it? So we are using the same technology that allowed loans to be disbursed to infants and people born in the future. We are using the same system that has a 68% default rate, and we are expecting different results. That's the absolute definition of insanity. Doing the same shit and same thing, expecting different results. Red flag number 3. Validation theater. Over 1 million applications. Think about that number. 1 million applications, 100,000 spots. Validation of finalists across 290 constituencies in 2 days. If you do the math, if 100,000 people need to be validated, that's about 345 people per constituency in 1 day, assuming they work both on 24th and 25th of October. If each validation takes even 10 minutes, and remember, they're supposed to verify residency, education, employment status, gender, disability, and availability. That's about 3,450 minutes. That's 57.5 hours per constituency in 2 days. It's not possible, my guy. Unfortunately, because the numbers don't lie, man. Which means the validation was either rushed to the point of meaninglessness, or it didn't actually happen the way it was described. Either way, absolute theater. Red flag number 4, political timing and favoritism. Nyota was announced in August of 2025. That's just a few months after the Gen Z protest that nearly brought down the government. The protest forced Ruto, our president, to withdraw the finance bill, and they damaged his legitimacy. And here comes Nyota, a youth empowerment fund to rebuild that legitimacy. And where does phase one go? Or how sure can we be that that this won't be going to one of Ruto's stronghold? Phase one, because phase one went to Western, which is, quote unquote, Ruto's political stronghold. With Weta and Mudavadi and all these people, but all of them are supporting him. So the president himself attends the launch in Mumias. The optics are clear that this is a political project. What is supposed to be a fund that it's void of politics is now a proper tool that is used by the government to create traction for favorable outcomes in the coming election. Red flag number 5, multi-agency accountability diffusion. 6 agencies implementing one program. 6. In theory, collaboration. In practice, chaos. When something goes wrong, who's responsible? The State Department for Youth says it's MSEA's job. MSEA says it's NSSF job. NSSF jobs, it says it's NITA. And nothing ever gets fixed. We've seen this before with devolved funds like Uwezo, where when responsibility is shared, it's actually shucked. Red flag number 6. Forced saving. Incentivized savings. Of your 50,000 or 25,000, depending on who you ask, the 3,000 goes directly to NSSF. You don't get to choose. It's not optional. It's forced savings. Again, correct my language. Incentivized savings. Now, in theory, saving is a good thing. But when you are a struggling entrepreneur who needs capital now, having 3,000 taken from you and locked into a pension scheme is not very helpful. It's a hidden tax. And the terms of withdrawal are unclear. Not stipulated anywhere. Red flag number 7, the mentorship mirage. Experienced entrepreneurs and industry experts are going to mentor you for 2 months. Quick question. Who are they? How are they even selected? Are they compensated? How is the quality of mentorship actually monitored? Again, we're in limbo. Youth Enterprise Development Fund promised mentorship. The Uwezos promised capacity building. The Women Enterprise Fund promised training. Where was it? Mentorship at scale is incredibly difficult. It requires so much infrastructure, funding, and commitment, none of which are evident in Nyota's design. Red flag number 8, no clear repayment terms. This is the big one. If this is a loan, where are the repayment terms? If it is a grant, why is it being financed by a World Bank loan? The ambiguity is deliberate because if they call it a loan, people would be less excited. If they call it a grant funded by a debt, people would ask hard questions. So, they called it business support and hope no one ever noticed. I could go on, but you get my point finally. Nyota has all the structural weaknesses of the funds that came before it, plus new risks introduced by World Bank financing and multi-agency implementation. It's using the same technology, the same political logic, the same opaque processes, and it's being sold with the same promise that this time is different. Namna gani, my friends? Hii ni tofauti. Hii si kama zile zingine zozote. Okay, let's zoom out. Because this isn't really about Nyota or the Hustler Fund or the YEDF or the WES or the Women Enterprise Fund. This is about a pattern that repeats across 2 decades, across 4 administrations, across billions of shillings. And if we don't name the pattern, we are going to keep falling and failing for it. So let me lay it out. The 7 deadly sins of Kenyan youth funds. Sin number 1, political capture. Every single one of these funds launches during or immediately after an election cycle. The Youth Enterprise Development Fund, 2007, Kibaki's second term. Women Enterprise Fund, 2006, same era. Uwezo Fund, 2013, Uhuru's first term. Hustler Fund, 2022, Ruto's first 6 months. And Nyota, 2025, post-Gen Z protest, pre-2027 election. These are not policy initiatives. They are political projects. They generate headlines. They create rallies. They give the president something to inaugurate. They produce testimonials, real or fabricated, of grateful beneficiaries. And when they fail, the political leaders who launch them are long gone, or they blame the beneficiaries, or they launch a new fund with a new name. The fund is not the point. Performance is the point. For all of you who've always, speaks ill of Prophet War and all these gimmicks that happen within the church circles and all these fake miracles, and you claim to still believe in this Nyota Fund, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Prophet War Show version 2.0. Karibuni. Scene number 2, undercapitalization. Every fund launches with big numbers. Billions allocated, millions of beneficiaries promised. Every one of them. And then, quietly, the budget starts getting cut. Hustler Fund, 10 billion in year 1, 5 billion in year 2, 300 million in year 3, a 97% cut. Youth Enterprise Development Fund, billions at launch, 200 million now. Uwezo Fund, same story. This, my friends, is deliberate. The launch is what matters politically. The headlines, the photos, the speeches. What happens 2 years later when the fund is quietly defunded? Nobody's paying attention anymore. The president has moved on to the next big thing. Scene number 3, no accountability infrastructure. None of these funds have proper loan recovery systems. None. The Youth Enterprise Development Fund outsourced to financial intermediaries who had no incentives to chase defaulters, who also relied on constituency committees that were politically captured. Hustler Fund outsourced to Safaricom and KCB with no dedicated tracking. Nyota, they're using the same USSD code and digital wallet system as the Hustler Fund. And when billions go missing, the 4.64 billion in Uwezo, 35 billion in Hustler Fund defaults, what happens? Investigations are announced. EACC gets involved. Audits are conducted. Reports, my God, are written. And then nothing. No prosecutions. No asset recovery. No one goes to jail. Nothing changes. Catherine Namuye and Bruce Othiambo were charged in 2016 with corruption related to 180 million shillings from the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. In 2026, have they been convicted? Or have we recovered that money? No, the system is designed to be unaccountable because the people running it benefit from the lack of accountability. Scene number 4, impossible economics. Here's a question. Yeah, just think about it. Can you start a viable business with 7,100 shillings? What about 22,000 shillings? Can you generate enough profit in 14 days to actually repay your 500 shilling loan? The answer is no. Obviously, no. But that's what these funds are asking people to do. The loan amounts are too small. The repayment periods are too short. The business environment is too hostile. Licenses are expensive. Regulations are opaque. Competition is fierce. And there is no support infrastructure. So what do people do? They come out of the money and go and piga sherehe. They use the money for consumption, for survival, for rent, for school fees, for food, medical bills, because that's what they actually need. And then they can't repay. And then they are blamed for being irresponsible, for not being or not having a proper business mindset, for lacking financial discipline. But the system was never, ever designed for them to actually succeed. It was designed for them to borrow, fail, and be blamed. Sin number 5, missing the target. Who actually benefits from these funds? Not the poorest, as we've seen. Not the most marginalized. Not the people from the bottom of the pyramid. The Hustler Fund data is clear. The wealthiest quintile accesses the most. Urban centers dominate. The digitally illiterate win. Why? Because these funds require things that the poorest don't have. Smartphones, internet access, financial literacy, knowledge on how to navigate bureaucratic systems, social capital. So the funds meant to empower the marginalized are captured by a relatively privileged bunch. Not the rich necessarily, but the lower middle class, the urban working people, the people who are struggling, yes, but who have the tools to access these systems. Meanwhile, the person in a rural area with no smartphone, no internet, no understanding of the USSD codes, they never seem to even apply. This is upward redistribution disguised as bottom-up economics. Scene number 6, corruption and capture. I've already talked about the scandals. The Youth Enterprise Development Fund, the Uwezo, the missing billions, the CEO charged with corruption, the staff suspended, the dormant constituency offices. But let me be clear, this is not incidental. No. This is structural. When you design a fund with no accountability, with no tracking, with no consequences, you're designing it for corruption. When you put billions of shillings in the hands of constituency committees appointed by politicians, you're designing it for capture. The corruption is not a bug in this case. Like I keep reminding you guys, it's a feature because corruption serves a purpose. It enriches the people running the system. It creates patron-client networks. It generates kickbacks. It funds political campaigns. The money that goes missing doesn't actually vanish. It goes somewhere, into people's pockets, into someone's campaign war chest. And the people at the top always understand well and know this. They tolerate it because they benefit from it. Scene number 7, amnesia and repetition. And this is the most insidious one. Every new fund promises to learn from the mistakes of the previous one. Every new fund claims to be different, to have oversight, to have better systems, to have more or to be more transparent. But the structures are the same. The weaknesses are the same. So the outcomes, unfortunately, are always the same. The Youth Enterprise Development Fund fails. So did Uwezo. So you launch a Hustler Fund, which fails. So we now launch Nyota. At no point does anyone say, maybe the problem isn't the name of the fund. Maybe the problem is the entire model. At no point does anyone say, maybe we should fix the Youth Enterprise Development Fund instead of launching a new fund. At no point does anyone say, maybe we should prosecute the people who stole from Uwezo before we trust them with Nyota. The amnesia is deliberate because if we remembered, we would demand accountability, would demand change, would demand that people responsible for previous failures not be put in charge of new initiatives. But every election cycle, the slate is wiped clean and we start again. This is not incompetence. This is design. So, 7 deadly sins: political capture, undercapitalization, no accountability, impossible economics, missing the target, corruption and capture, and finally amnesia and repetition. And Nyota is already committing all of them. So, what's this all going to cost us? As a country, as a people? Let's start with the money, the easy part. You know why? Youth Enterprise Development Fund from 2007 to 2024, 14.2 billion shillings dispersed. Default rate at 25%. That's at least 3.5 billion shillings in direct losses. Uwezo Fund, 4.64 billion shillings, unaccounted for as of 2021. Not lost, technically, just missing. No records, no accountability. Assume Assume it's gone. Women Enterprise Fund, hard to calculate because this data is very sparse. But given the collapse in disbursements, let's conservatively estimate at least 800 million in losses over the years. Hustler Fund, this is a big one. 70 billion shillings disbursed, default rate of 60+%. That's about 47.6 billion shillings in defaults. But wait, the government says they've recovered 60 billion. Okay. Let's do their numbers. 70 billion disbursed minus 60 billion recovered equals 10 billion lost. But that's just the loans. What about the cost of borrowing? The government borrows at 8.2% to fund this. The operational cost is 3%. So the real cost is 11.2%. And he lends us at 8%. That's about 3.2 in defaults. On 70 billion disbursed, 3.2% loss is about totaling to 12.2 billion in losses. But wait, the KNHRC reports the net loss is 71.5%. That would be 50 billion shillings. Let's split the difference and say Hustler Fund has cost Kenyans at least 30 billion shillings. It's a conservative estimate. And let's add it up now. Youth Development Fund, 3.55. Uwezo Fund, 4.64. Women, we've given it a conservative of 0.8 billion. Hustler Fund, 30 billion. Total? That's 39 billion shillings at least. And that's being generous to the government. 39 billion shillings that could have been used to build hospitals, schools, roads, water systems. 39 billion shillings that's just vanished, gone. And now we are adding Nyota, 5 billion from the World Bank. How much of that will be lost? If we apply the Hustler Fund default rate of 60-something percent, that's about 3.4 billion shillings down the drain, plus interest on the World Bank loan, which you and I as Kenyan taxpayers will have to repay eventually. Social cost. But money is just money, isn't it? The real cost is deeper. Land helplessness. What does a young Kenyan learn from this pattern? That the government announces programs it doesn't intend to sustain. That promises mean nothing. That even when you are doing everything right, you apply, you validate, you receive funding, try to build a business, the system is rigged against you. So why try? Why believe? Why participate in civic life when you know it's all theater? This actually breeds cynicism, apathy, disengagement, and in the long run, that's more dangerous than a physical deficit. The Hustler Fund has trapped millions of Kenyans in a cycle of borrowing and default. Yes, the government claims it's removed 3 million people from Credit Reference Bureau blacklist. But how many has it added? If you borrowed 1,000 bob in good faith, tried to use it for your business, couldn't repay it in 14 days, and now you're listed as a defaulter, your credit score is destroyed. You can't access formal banking. You're shut out of the system completely. And for what? 1,000 bob. Less than $10. These funds are supposed to promote entrepreneurship. But when they fail at such massive scales, they do the opposite. They poison the well. Young people see business support programs fail. They see loans that can't be repaid. They see friends and family trapped in debt, and they conclude entrepreneurship is a scam. Business is for other people. I should just stick to looking for a job, except there are no jobs. So they are stuck. No jobs, no viable path to entrepreneurship, just survival. These funds consistently benefit urban centers over rural areas. Nairobi, Kiambu, Nakuru dominate. Why? Infrastructure. Internet access, financial literacy, proximity to government offices. Meanwhile, someone in Turkana, in Mandera, or rural Siaya is completely locked out. They don't even know that these funds exist. Or if they do, they simply can't access them. So the funds meant to reduce inequality actually widen the inequality. So when billions go missing and no one goes to jail, what message does that send? It says stealing from the youth funds is low risk, high reward. It says the system is corrupt and everyone knows it and no one actually cares. And that rot spreads. It's not just youth funds, it's every government program, it's procurement, it's service delivery, it's everything. So when corruption is normalized at this scale, it becomes a feature of governance. And that's a cancer that actually strips a nation bare. Every administration starts from zero. Uhuru didn't fix Kibaki's Youth Enterprise Development Fund. He launched Uwezo. Ruto didn't even try to fix Uwezo Fund. He launched Hustler Fund. And now he's launching Nyota instead of fixing his own Hustler Fund. There is no institutional learning, no continuity, no iterative improvement, just one failed experiment after another. And that's a waste of state capacity. The fact that the World Bank is financing Nyota despite the Hustler Fund's catastrophic failure should tell you something about how these institutions operate. Either the World Bank doesn't know about the Hustler Fund, which would be stunning incompetence, or they know and don't care because Kenya is a client, debt is a product, and as long as Kenya keeps borrowing, the system works and works for them. Borrowed for Kenya, But for Kenya, we're talking about debt to fund programs that will almost certainly fail. And when they do, the World Bank will still expect its money back. And with interest, mark you. We are mortgaging our future for political theater. This is a cost. Billions of shillings, millions of lives, generational cynicism, institutional decay. And for what? For someone's personal glory. So, what should we do instead? If these funds don't work, what does? Let me give you, a few, maybe 5 alternatives that come to my head. Imagine if we don't need a new fund. We already have 4. The youth enterprise is the oldest. It's been around since 2007. It has infrastructure, it has staff, it has a legal framework. So fix it. Conduct a full audit, prosecute the corrupt officials, implement a real loan recovery system, simplify the application process, increase loan sizes to amounts that actually matter, provide real training and mentorship, monitor the outcomes. And instead of launching Nyota, redirect that 5 billion shillings into a reformed youth enterprise and development fund. But they won't do this. Why? Because there's no ribbon to cut, no launch event, no photo op with the president. Fixing an old fund is boring. Launching a new one, always exciting. Alternative number 2. What if instead of giving out loans, we invested in the infrastructure that creates jobs? Strengthen technical and vocational education and training. The TVETs. Make them world-class, free tuition for students from low-income backgrounds, partnership with private companies for apprenticeship. Certification programs that actually lead to genuine employment. Build business incubators with real mentorship, not 2 months programs run by experienced entrepreneurs we can't name. Real long-term legal advice, access to markets, connections to the investors, fund youth innovation hubs, maker spaces, co-working spaces, places where young people can build things, prototype ideas, or even collaborate. But they won't do this. Why? Because it's long-term. It takes years to see results, and politicians operate on election cycles. They need wins now, not in 5 years. Number 3, what if instead of creating funds, we removed the obstacles that prevent young people from working? Make business registration free or close to it. Right now, registering a business in Kenya costs money. Not a lot, but enough to be a barrier if you're poor. Make it free. Simplify licensing. The process of getting licenses to operate businesses in Kenya is Byzantine. Multiple agencies, multiple fees, endless bureaucracy. Streamline it. Enforce the 30% AGPO set aside. The law says 30% of government procurement should go to the youth, women, and people with disabilities, but it's rarely enforced. Enforce it. Create transparent, accessible procurement portals. Penalize agencies that do not comply. Create demand-side jobs through infrastructure. Build roads, schools, hospitals, affordable housing. These projects require labor. Hire young people. Train them on the job. But they won't do this. Why? Because it requires competence. It requires reform. It requires taking on powerful interests who benefit from the current system. So it's hard. And launching a fund is easy. Okay, if you absolutely must give money to young people, here's an idea. Just give it to them. No loans, no repayment, no business support theatre. Universal basic income pilot. 100,000 youth, 5,000 shillings per month. 1 year, for 1 year. Total cost, 100,000 youth at 5,000 bob for 12 months. That's 6 billion shillings. That's more than Nyota's business support. But it's unconditional. No applications, no validation, no USSD codes, no digital wallets, no fraud infrastructure. Just plain old simple cash. Young people use it for whatever they need, whether it's rent, food, school fees, starting a small business, whatever. And we study the outcomes. Does it reduce poverty? Improve health? Enable entrepreneurship? This is not a radical idea. UBI pilots have been tried in Kenya and by organizations like Give Directly. The data shows they work, but the government won't do this. Why? Because it's honest. It admits that what we are doing is redistribution, not empowerment. And politicians do not want to be honest. They want to be seen as creating opportunities, not giving handouts. Even when their opportunities are just handouts with extra steps and massive overheads. And finally, seriously, do nothing. Stop crowding out private microfinance. When the government lends at 8%, it undercuts legitimate lenders who charge market rates. Those lenders have proper underwriting. They track borrowers. They enforce repayment because they have to. It's their money. They will call everyone in your family. So government funds create moral hazards. People borrowing thinking it's a gift because often it is, and that distorts the market. So stop. Let the market work. Let the young people access commercial credit with proper terms. Yes, it's more expensive, but it's also more discipline. And over time, competition brings the prices down. But they won't do this. Why? Because it requires the government to admit that it's part of the problem. That its interventions make things worse, and no government wants to admit that they failed. 5 alternatives, all of them better than Nyota, none of them political, useful, or viable. So, they will never happen. Okay, we've covered a lot. Let me bring it all together. We have a pattern. 2 decades of youth empowerment funds, billions of shillings disbursed, and billions of shillings lost. Corruption scandals, defaults, defunding. Repeat, recycle, resing. It's the same thing. The youth YEDF, Where's Women Enterprise Fund, Hustler Fund, Nyota, different names, same failures. And the question everyone is asking is, why do these funds keep failing? But I want to ask a different question. What if they're not failing? What if they're working exactly as designed? How did you think about it? These funds generate massive political capital at launch. Rallies, speeches, media coverage, the president handing out checks, grateful beneficiaries, giving testimonials. It's all very good for political and polling numbers. They distribute small amounts of money widely. 100,000 youth here, 1 million borrowers there. That's a lot of people who feel like they've got something, even if it's not enough, even if they can't repay it, they got something. And maybe, just maybe, they remember that at election time. They create a plausible deniability. When the fund fails, who's to blame? The youth for not being able to repay, for not being entrepreneurial enough, the borrowers for lacking financial discipline, the system, which is always vaguely broken but never specifically anyone's fault. Not the president who launched it, not the cabinet secretary who ran it, not the MPs who sat on the oversight board. They generate corruption opportunities. Money flows through opaque systems, constituency committees, digital wallet, multi-agency implementation, and some of it sticks to people's fingers. Kickbacks, tenders, procurement. It's lucrative for all the right people. They create dependency. Every time a fund fails, the narrative is, we need to try again. We need a new fund with a new name, better system, more oversight. So the cycle continues. The government is always trying to help, always just about to get it right. If only the youth would cooperate, if only the borrowers would actually repay. And in so doing, they manufacture helplessness. The young people learn that the systems do not work for them, that promises are empty and they are on their own. So, they stop asking for change. They stop organizing. They stop voting. Voting for transformation. They just survive, hustle, or get by. What if this is the point? What if these funds aren't designed to empower the youth, but to pacify them? What if they're not meant to create entrepreneurs, but to create dependents? What if the failure is the actual success story? I'm not saying this is a grand conspiracy. I'm not even saying that there's a secret cabal plotting to keep young people down. But what I am saying is, when the system produces the same results over and over across different administrations, across different funds, with the same structural flaws and the same lack of accountability, you have to ask yourself, is this a bug or a feature? When billions go missing and no one goes to jail, is that incompetence or impunity? When the people who ran the Youth Enterprise Development Fund go into the ground are still in government, running new programs, is that an oversight or is it choice? When the Auditor General writes reports after report highlighting the same failures and nothing changes, is that bureaucratic inertia or deliberate indifference? I think it's a feature. I think the system is working as intended for the people who definitely benefit from it. So let's talk about Nyota one more time. December 7th, 2025, Mumia's Sports Complex, Kakamega. President Ruto is on stage. He's launching phase 1 of the Nyota Fund. 50,000 youth from Western region are getting their business grants. Well, not 50,000 shillings. 22,000 shillings in the digital wallets. 3,000 shillings locked away in a saving scheme that may or may not be accessible. The cameras are rolling. The speeches are soaring. The president is smiling. And 1 million young Kenyans have applied and weren't selected, are watching from home wondering what they did wrong. And the 50,000 who did get selected are trying to figure out how to start a business with 22,000 shillings in an economy where a business license costs more than that. And the World Bank is tallying up the loan on Kenya's debt ledger with interest. And in 2 years, maybe 3, when the default rates start climbing, when the money runs out, when the fund quietly gets defunded, there will be audits, investigations, reports, and nothing, sadly, will change because in 2027, there's another election. And whichever government wins, we launch another fund with another name, another promise, another 5 billion shillings. And we'll do this all over again. Unless we stop, unless we remember, unless we demand something changes, something different. Here's what I want you to take away from this episode. 1. Nyota is not new. It's a repetition. Don't let the name fool you. Don't let the World Bank partnership fool you either. Do not let the promises fool you. We've seen it before. 2, the pattern is the problem. It's not about fixing the fund or that fund. It's about changing the entire model. Stop launching funds and start building systems. 3, accountability matters. So demand it. When the Auditor General publishes a report showing billions missing, don't just shake your head and move on. Ask, where is the money? Who took it? Why aren't they in jail? 4, political theater is expensive. Every launch event, every ribbon cutting, every presidential speech costs money. It costs staff time. It costs resources. And it produces nothing of value. We can't afford it anymore. 5, young Kenyans deserve better, not loans they can't repay, not training that leads nowhere, not digital wallets 22K. They deserve jobs, education, healthcare, infrastructure, a functioning economy, a government that actually is willing to work for them. We won't get that from another fund. Nyota means star in Swahili. Stars are beautiful, bright, and hopeful. But stars are also distant, unreachable, and the space between them is darkness. That's what Nyota Fund is. A distant promise in a vast darkness. And in that darkness, billions of shillings disappear. Youth dreams die. The same people who crushed every fund before get an opportunity to do it all over again with our money, with the World Bank's blessings, and with the same sad, inevitable outcome. So, the next time someone tells you about a new youth empowerment fund, ask them this instead. What happened to the last one? And the one before that? And the one before that either? And when they can't give you a good answer, because I know they won't, you'll know exactly what this new fund is all about. It's not a solution. It's the problem. And it's the problem rebranded. That is it for this episode of the Kenyan Week that was. If you found this useful, share it, especially with young people who might be thinking of applying for the Nyota or any other fund that will come through before the 2027 election. They deserve to know the history. They deserve to know the pattern. All the sources for this episode are going to be in the description, because we like being counter-checked. Auditor General reports, the KHRC analysis, government budget documents, news articles, it's all there. Check it out, verify it. And if you find something I got wrong, let me know in the comments. Next week, we'll be talking about something a little more lighter, or maybe not. I haven't decided yet. Until then, stay sharp, stay skeptical, and remember, this time is not different. It never is. And like we always say, receipts over vibes. Always. Baraka tele na Mungu awabariki. Have yourselves a lovely, lovely, lovely week ahead.